Hello, friends. Welcome to Come&See with H&H. My name is Harpreet.
My name is Hazel, and today we have another guest speaker with us.
Yay!
We have the Associate Professor of Youth Ministry here at William Jessup University, Professor Fritz Moga.
Welcome to the channel.
Yes, I know. We're super excited to have you.
Well, I just want to say thanks for inviting me.
Yes, of course.
My two all-time favorite students.
Oh.
Don't tell the other students. Don't tell the other students I said that.
We're not going to say anything.
You're
Yeah,
the
you
one
did.
exposing yourself
Well,
right
they
now.
better not watch.
So we do want
Oh, yeah, they can watch. That's okay.
We all want them to watch. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to Jessup and like your role here?
Yeah, I was looking at some dates today, but I came here as the director of campus ministries. So I'd come from youth ministry, which I'll go into later, and I came here as the director of campus ministries, overseeing the chapel services and the mission services and small groups. So it's a lot bigger than it was then. It was really small back in San Jose. And I looked up the date. My first date was August 24th, 2000.
That was before I was born.
Wow. I was 2 years old.
Okay, good.
Or maybe 3, but yeah.
And then I did that for just like 3.5 years. And right when we made the move here, I became a full-time professor. I knew they were going to be adding someone in the youth ministry department, and so I threw my hat in the ring and ultimately got that position. So it's been, I guess, 19-ish, coming up on 20 years of full-time as a professor.
Wow,
So,
congratulations
awesome.
on that.
Thanks.
So, did you when you went to college, did you do it in youth ministry, or where was the area of this is what am I going to master in, or get a degree, major in, that's not master, major in?
Had no idea that was a thing. Actually, youth ministry, my first degree was in PE. So I was a PE teacher, and I went to school 5.5 years through the teacher ed program, and ended up only teaching 3.5. So I went to school longer than I actually taught, but I taught at Valley Christian School in San Jose, a very big school system, for 3.5 years, and I really loved that. And when people ask, how did your call to ministry come? Mine was on the phone. I literally got a phone call from a pastor who said, hey, a friend suggested you might be interested. I go, well, let me chat with you. And I'm not sure I was interested, but I made that switch. I'd been volunteering in youth ministry for a long time, but I did a 3-month interim spot. And that was my only full-time youth ministry until I walked into my first job.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is so neat. And you've been doing it for 19 plus years?
And the youth ministry part I did for, about 19 years. I was only at 2 different churches. So I was at one almost 8 and the other one about 11.
Wow.
And went from a little bit smaller to a little bit bigger. The second one I had, 150 kids in junior high and high school.
Got it.
I had about 30 volunteers that worked for me, and it was a great run.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenal time of life.
That's awesome. So what are some of the classes you teach here at Jessup?
I brought a list, so
Oh,
I could at least say
that.
some
Course
of them here.
catalog is being pulled out right now.
Yes. So things I looked the other day. I've taught over 20 classes. If you include even a the 2-unit or a 1-unit SFG, spiritual
Got it.
formation.
Yeah.
But the major classes I've taught for years are youth ministry skills, youth culture, trends and issues, teaching and speaking to youth, which is one I just adore, counseling youth.
Wow.
And then I've also done, of course, the mentorship for all my students, the internship for all my students, and the capstone for all of my students. And I started 5 years ago doing speech, which you
I
had,
took
correct?
with you, yep.
Yeah, and I started doing contemporary discipleship, now called Gospel Worldview, which I know you had it. Did I not have you in that?
I do not have you now.
So I I just had you each in one class.
Wow.
And
That's
we're his
awesome.
favorites still.
I know. Wow.
Right.
We left an impression.
That's awesome. It's very narrow in the sense of it's youth ministry, but very broad in
very
what you're
diverse in that.
learning or teaching. The
Yeah,
youth
because
and
it's
stuff.
skills, it's teaching,
Yeah.
it's understanding how to counsel them, how to talk with them. And what's I think a little bit unique in some of my classes, we actually go on retreats.
I heard.
So in one of them, it's called Foundations of Youth Ministry, and we do a serve weekend. So we've been to San Francisco for years. We served in Berkeley. And then when COVID hit, we made a change. I had some former volunteers that were working with an organization helping people up in Paradise that had lost everything in the fires. And they worked up there for about 3-4 years. So 2 years we went up there and just helped people begin to rebuild their houses.
That's awesome.
And then in Youthman Skills, part of the thing is learning how to put on a phenomenal retreat where people will learn things. And so we create one mostly just for our class, and then we go somewhere and we do a retreat for ourselves.
That's neat. I love that like you implement how to love others in your classes.
Right.
Because I feel like sometimes it's so easy to go through your Christian education, but not like learn how to like serve and love others in a way that's like one might not actually feel comfortable. Like I know for me, like that would be me very much stepping out of my comfort zone. But like doing it in a class with my classmates, I'm like, that's so neat. Like the body of Christ serving others.
Yeah.
Like, and I actually moved up the retreats, especially in the serving one, because I found that we would bond so much. But if we go in the end of the semester, it's like, we come back and it's almost over.
Yeah.
So we started doing that one a little early.
Yeah.
And then last year, for the first time, I'd been wanting to do this pre-COVID, and it didn't work. But in counseling youth, we went up and spent a weekend up at a place called Christian Encounter Ranch.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, it's just a home. It's a 180-acre ranch place for troubled teens. And we went up there and spent time just eating and playing with the teens that are there, but hearing their testimonies. We heard from their interns, some of the staff, and it was just a great experience. So, yeah, I'm an incredibly practical person.
Yeah, that's what
so if you take my classes, you better like to like do things, not just sit and absorb things.
No, and I think that's what's so important. It's like we can learn all the theology, we can learn all the knowledge, but if we don't like do anything with it, it's not really meaningful. So I love that in your class you're teaching them kind of like this is what you should do and how you should do it, but then you're going to go out and practice that.
Right.
Practicing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what got you passionate with youth ministry and like the youth generation specifically?
Well,
Well,
I mean, I know one thing, because you gave me they gave me some questions to think about, and I knew part of that, but the reality is, I both loved my teen years, but struggled, and I can go into some of my home life, because you know about how I came to know the Lord and everything, but I loved my teen years. I loved junior high. It was fantastic. I loved high school, and so, but I also struggled, and so I think even something in my brain clicked in a long time ago that perhaps there's a role for me to play there in helping others come through that. And at first it was teaching phys ed. I loved PE, I loved sports, I loved being on all the teams. And then it switched when I got that phone call to go into youth ministry. And then I think some of the things that were really important to me over that time was being able to watch students change. And here's what I say now, gals, is I'm still a youth pastor. I just do it at a college.
Wow.
And so I get to I've watched you grow, and I get these students that come at 18 even here and get to see them to 22, 23 sometimes. And it's the same when you take a kid in junior high youth group and they come in. Some of them are only 10 years old.
Wow.
I always say I don't want to do children's ministry, but they come in at 10 and they leave at 18. If you stay long enough and they go through your whole program, and you see so much amazing change in physical, spiritual, mental, all of it. And so I love to watch that growth. But I think a couple of things are when we go to camps or go to conferences, and it's almost like there's a growth pattern that's this just minuscule if you come to church or youth group all the time, and then you go to a camp and it just magnifies that. And things come out and you're absorbed with other people and Jesus and music and conversation. And then the one last piece on this scale, camps kind of do this. And then if you ever get to go on a missions trip,
oh my gosh,
it escalates it even more. So you came in here kind of doing your little churchy thing, but by the time you get involved in camps and missions, now you're way up here on this level. You've learned so much more and you've gone so much deeper.
Right.
That's awesome. And I've been able to, I started going to Mexico like a lot of people do. But I've been able to go and then take students to India, Honduras, Brazil.
So cool.
I've personally been to Germany, Belgium, all doing missions, France.
That's so cool.
And so when you get to see the world and experience what other Christians around the world are doing, it's an amazing thing. So, and I've worked a lot in the poverty parts too, in India and Brazil.
Yeah.
When I take students and they get to experience that, you come home really different.
Yeah, you do.
That was a long answer to say that's kind of what has gotten me really passionate about what I've been able to do.
In like the mission trips that I know you have led, like various mission trips, like through Dress Up and like other mission trips, as you kind of already listed off. In those, like, how have you like had your students that you were leading like relate to youth ministry in like other like cultures? And like I know you like teach a class on youth diversity or something. Can't remember the name of that.
I had one called Global Youth Ministry.
Okay.
So what I did is I turned mission trips into classes.
Wow.
Because
that's neat.
you've been on a mission trip somewhere.
I'm going to.
You are.
I'm going to
I
this
know
summer.
you are. And you learn so much.
Yeah.
Why not get credit for some of that learning?
Yeah.
So that's what I did. So then they became focused on youth. So 2 examples is in India, we actually got a bunch of youth pastors together in Mumbai, and I had some of my youth men students on the trip, and we led seminars for them. So my students are training the pastors in India.
Wow.
And that was
really neat.
super cool.
That's so
And then in
cool.
Brazil, I work with an organization that started out, they do a lot now, but started out just going into the slums of Brazil and finding these kids that had nothing and trying to just tell them about Jesus. And so now that's part of what we do when we're there. We go to like 4 different little slum areas and we put on day programs that the ministry does all the time. So when we come, we just work alongside them, but then we create a weekend camp for these kids that come out. So it's crazy. Some of them have like never seen a swimming pool, right? And one little kid jumped in and we pulled him, and he's like got his pants on and everything. He just jumped in. He had no idea he could drown. Like he didn't even know that was a thing. We pulled him out and 2 minutes later he's back in. Right? But so we do a whole camp, a whole weekend with games and activities and Bible teaching, and all of my students that go on the trips create all of that. So
That's so
it is
neat.
very much focused around the youth ministry part of it.
Wow.
So.
I love that. That's so neat.
Yeah, Honduras, we worked at an orphanage, we taught at a school, we did Awana,
I love
we did an
Awana.
Awansa, as they call it in Honduras. So it's always been around youth-related things.
Wow. That's awesome.
I know for me, like I did not grow up in a Christian home, and so like youth ministry, like starting like when I started working at my church, youth ministry was like super new to me. I'm like, well, what is youth ministry? And so for like someone who like I guess as like is not a believer, someone who did not grow up in the Christian like home, what does youth ministry even entail of like in what like as someone who's been in youth ministry for such a long time and who teaches classes, like how would you I guess invite someone to like start being a part of youth ministry and kind of I want to hear a take on that.
So a little history lesson. The mainline churches really understood this long before our evangelical churches, like our Christian churches, right? The Methodists and Presbyterians. So they've had youth men programs for a long, long time. And then other organizations like Youth for Christ came along, and Young Life, and Billy Graham was actually the very first paid person for Youth for Christ.
Oh, wow.
And he started these big rallies, right? And they would do the big rallies, and then they came into the churches. And then a guy was working at a Presbyterian church, and he saw these kids that wouldn't come into a church. And so that's when he started going to the campuses, and that's how Young Life, an organization, started. So they reach out to kids that might not ever go to church, might not ever see that. Like you might have been contacted on your high school campus by someone for Youth for Christ, or what's the sports one?
National Christian Association, FCA.
Fellowship,
Fellowship.
right?
There you go,
And so they might contact with you, and you may
Yeah.
have never been to a church, but all of a sudden there's somebody, some sort of religious-y person kind of stepping onto your campus.
Right.
So that's
happen.
kind of how all that started in
Got
terms
it.
of youth ministry. Now, mostly all churches have some sort of youth men program. And the desire is simply to have a safe space for kids to come, to talk about God, to talk about life. The best youth men programs aren't about the glitz, the glamour, the lights.
That's good.
The best programs are about people gathering together in relationship, getting to know one another, and having real conversations about life.
That's good.
And that's what I needed growing up. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home either. We did go to the Catholic Church. I have a great fondness for my Catholic brothers and sisters. I always want to make sure that's clear. And I had to go to catechism every Saturday, but I never made the Jesus connection there. I learned Bible stories and everything, but I came from a really severe alcoholic home where my parents drank most nights, would fight often. And I remember watching them literally hitting each other and falling down and all of this. And I knew when I was like 12 or 13, I said, something's got to be different. Something's got to be different. And so when I discovered Jesus through a camp experience, and I discovered that there was another way to live, and then when I realized there's kids that need the same thing I did, that's what made it so powerful to me. So when I went into my first ministry, everybody comes in with their own slant on who they are, what you bring to life.
Right.
And so I brought that into my ministry to make sure that there was just a space for kids to talk.
Wow, that's so powerful. It's like your story or whatever trial that you had, like it didn't go to waste.
Right.
Like it's being used for so many other people, and I think that is so beautiful. Like God can use the things that we feel are so terrible in our life to help guide other people that are in similar situations. So I think that is so powerful.
Yeah, when a kid wants to talk about growing up in a great Christian home, I honestly, I can only relate to that as a father trying to create that with my own family. But if a kid wants to come and say, listen, my family's all messed up, they're dysfunctional. I used to say, look up dysfunctional family in a dictionary, and it would just be a picture of my family.
Wow.
Like, so dysfunctional. You want to talk about that. You want to talk about parents who are alcoholics. You want to talk about siblings who are drug abusers. Boy, I got you.
Yeah.
Like, I can talk about that all day because that was my experience. Right?
I feel like your childhood like didn't give you a steady person, and like you became that for others. Like that's so powerful, and like such a huge calling on your life. It's like I'm gonna be what I didn't get.
That's the positive side.
Yeah.
The negative side is I'm a rescuer. I don't want to see anyone's life go to waste, anyone's story.
Right.
Never waste a good crisis, right? And I want to make sure that everyone is rescued, everyone is saved from everything, and that's an impossible goal.
It's hard, Man, that's heavy.
So your original question, though, about youth group, kind of what goes on more, or
kind of just what is youth ministry and what does like youth ministry entail, and for someone who is not in youth ministry and maybe wants to like get involved, like what are resources or what are ways for someone to kind of start.
Well, a lot of it's programmatic, right? I mean, we come in and that's what I get to teach in my classes. And I always say it's actually called administry, because if you can't do the administration part of most jobs, you don't get to do the ministry.
Right.
Like some people want to go into youth ministry because they love teenagers, they want to make a difference, and all they want to do is hang out with teenagers. I don't think there's a job that gets paid for that.
Just that,
like you have to organize, and so fortunately, I'm super gifted in admin. I love to organize things, A's, B's, and C's. I always say I love to put ducks in a row.
Okay.
I don't know where the ducks come from. Like I'm not a visionary.
Right.
But you give me ducks, I can organize them. I can line them up. Right?
Yeah,
I echo that too.
And so a lot of it is the organization. So what are you going to do every Sunday? What are you going to be teaching on? What these days you have music. So who's in the band? How do you create the band? Then what are you going to do on Wednesday nights if you have, or midweek? What are you going to do for camps and conferences? All those things come into play. The admin part of it does. Right? Yeah. And then you also have the relational side. And that's the side that I think is so important. And our kids are so overwhelmed today. Right? I mean, I sometimes I don't know if it's just because I'm getting old that it also seems like it's crazier than ever.
Right, you're like,
It definitely is.
But I think it is.
It really is. Like I have two of my youngest cousins. They're in like high school, and one of them's in middle school, about to go into high school. And I was just like, your guys' high school experience is so different than mine. And I was like, we're only like 4 or 5 years apart. And I'm just like, well, okay, maybe a little bit more now that I think about it. But it's just like, that's crazy. Like our experiences have shifted so much, and I think a huge part of that had to do with like pandemic and like just how for them a lot of things changed, and a lot of like in classroom structure changed. And
so I think this like really connects with social media. Like I think the reason why the youth really struggle is because they're comparing themselves with other people. You have this like lack of connection with people from COVID and stuff. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Like kind of what are the biggest struggles you've seen a youth face?
COVID intensified everything. So I don't think there's anything particularly brand new that came out of COVID, but if you were struggling with something before, it just intensified it all. And I think some of the things that I've noticed, and again, I have that perspective of looking back on life, looking back on my teen years, my children's teen years, all of that, you guys, students growing up. And I think there's 3 areas that have really risen up that need some attention, or at least are things to consider. The first one is just access to information. You do realize that, in fact, a funny story, my daughter just moved into a new home in Nebraska. They moved out there. I have 2 granddaughters out there. and there was this yellow phone there. Phone, like a phone.
Yeah,
you
right,
pick
right.
it up,
He was like a phone. Do you know
and
what a phone
they
is?
and they
Like a
put it.
telephone,
They
like one
actually
of
put
those?
it on the wall
Okay,
just to
yeah.
have
Yeah,
it there.
yeah, yeah.
And
I
their
love it.
daughter actually said, "What is that? What it's used for? What's it used for?" Right?
Wow.
And I said, well, you had to have a really long cord so you could drag it all the way the cord into your room so you could talk to a boyfriend or girlfriend privately, right? So we had no access to anything.
Yeah.
I don't remember news. I came through. I was kind of the tail end of Vietnam War, around that time in high school, and I didn't know hardly anything about it because I didn't watch the nightly news, and that was it.
Yeah.
And now there's just information all the time at your fingertips.
Yeah, your fingertips. Yeah.
And so I can think of in the last few days, there's been at least 2 major shootings in places. There's floods. There's problems around the world. I saw in the news the people marching in Paris. I don't even know why, but I caught that little piece. The whole world and students see this. And so if we have an anxiety level that if our base is here and throw in some family issues and some school problems or you make a sports team, it kind of hovers around. Right. But all of a sudden, if youth can begin to see that this whole world and there's people fighting everywhere, that just raises the anxiety level.
Yeah, that's so true.
Have you guys felt that in your own life? Do you recognize what's going on in the world around you, or is
I avoid looking at the news because I'm a very emotional person, and then I'm just like it wrecks me, and so I can't. But I think one of the individuals on staff here at Jessup, I went to go say hi to them, and they mentioned the shooting, the school shooting, and I was just like, wow, way to make me sad now. And so I was thinking about it. I was like, it's just reminds me of what a sinful world we live in. I know that I know that daily on a daily basis, and I don't like to be reminded of it, and so I don't like personally looking at the news, but just talking to my cousins and just having conversations with them, I'm just like, wow, your life is so different than mine, and I'm so sorry that it is.
And I don't like it either. So I watch enough to be to know what's going on in the world. I can't ignore that. And then the second thing I think that's going on with young people is just technology, and it kind of ties into the access to information, but this constant scrolling. They
TikTok, man.
You can't even say TikTok anymore. You better watch the news to know what's going on. But they're doing studies, and the studies are showing that trying to come off of social media is the same as trying to get off a serious drug. Trying to detox from a serious drug, it's the same feeling.
Wow.
And I've watched videos on little kids, and they took their phones away for 48 hours, and the kids were crying and pain, and it's not just young people, though. I've got to admit. The other day I had to put my phone on the charger in a bedroom, and I was watching television, and I just wanted to do something else.
Right. We get so used to that.
And so it's everyone that I think is like that.
I love that you brought that up because my parents, I will be having a conversation about something very seriously, and they are on their phones, and I'm just, and we have a conversation, and they ask me questions, and then they re-ask me the same questions, and I was like, I literally was talking to you. So I was we have a saying in our household, me and my siblings, that technology has ruined our parents.
Right.
Yeah, no, it has. Because it ruins a relationship. Nowadays, if you see friends hanging out, they're going out to get dinner, they're both on their phone, they're just scrolling through social media. I'm I'm here to connect with you. But then we're both on our phone. You know what I mean? You're losing connection. And everything is this online connection. And so how do you think this affects or relates to our relationship with God? Do you see an effect there?
Well, I do, and I think there's more of a positive than negative. I think the negative are some of the things you had mentioned about the identity issues and the comparison issues. That's just horrible. And unless we can find our self-image, our God image, right, who we are in Christ, then we're just going to struggle. We're always going to struggle with that comparison. On the other hand, we have, with that access to information, we have so much access to God stuff. Right, to God stuff.
Word of God.
I love my YouTube, and I watch music video after music video after music video. I watch people from around the world. I have my favorite worship artists from Africa and from Brazil and from India.
That's awesome.
And I watch worship in other languages, and I soak that in. So there's that. Bible app. The Bible app. Right? And it was, I think it was actually in your contemporary discipleship class that Julia was in there, and she reminded me. I'd sort of used it before, and then I didn't, and I've hardly missed a day since. How long ago were you in that class?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. I've hardly missed a day on the Bible app in 3 years.
Wow.
Because a student reminded me that there's this app, right? And you get to pick what you want to look at, what you want to read on.
Yeah.
And I'm reading, you can read on anxiety, you can read on rest, you can read on sports. I did one of those recently. And so that's good. And then have you guys heard of the Filament Bible? This is going to change your world.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? This is going to change your world. This could literally change the world of Bible reading.
Huh.
It's a new app. It's called Filament, Filament.
Okay.
You download the app for free. Then you order a Filament Bible. Mine was large print, and so it was all of $25, but you can get them as cheap as $15.
Okay.
And then you open your Bible, and you open your app, and you put your app, like the picture thing, over the page number. So you're on page 628, and you're in the Psalms here. And it will immediately open up studies, commentaries, devotionals, maps.
Wow.
What are those Bible Project videos?
Yeah.
Like all of that will come up. And so if you wanted to look up Psalm 68, it will tell you what was going on at the time in Israel. It'll show you a map of Israel. It'll show you commentaries on what the words mean and what it meant in the Hebrew. It's phenomenal.
Wow, that's
and
awesome.
so to take these digital natives that all they know is phone and this and that and everything, and to tie that directly to, not only can you have your phone on your Bible, but a physical Bible, which I love.
Yes.
And then to just take a picture of a page number, have that access in your hands. So I think that with a little twist, we can take this access to technology and we can make an incredibly positive and powerful thing in the lives of young people.
I love that. It just reminds me, like, the verse, like, what the enemy meant for evil, like, it could have been used for evil, and it is sometimes used for evil. Like, God can use for good. That is so good. So cool.
I'm enthralled with it. And a student told me about it recently.
Wow.
See, I get all my good stuff from you guys, right? You guys tell me things, and I go out and I buy stuff for it.
Wow.
I'm like, I want to try that out.
Well, I'll try to link it down below, so if you guys want to check it out, you guys can look it up and click on the link and follow. So I think with just the generation we live in, youth, like, we're constantly kept busy because of social media and technology and just school, professors, homework that y'all are giving us.
Sorry.
We're kept so busy, and I think it's so hard to apply this, like, command that God calls us to rest. And so I think this really, I don't know, this could be really beneficial for the youth specifically. How do you, I don't know, maybe what advice you have for the youth that are looking for rest? You know, we need rest, so how would we implement rest? And
Well, the advice would be good luck.
Nice.
Oh, thank you.
But one of the things I discovered from my upbringing is because my parents physically fought and it was loud, and we'd be, like my siblings, I would be hiding in our bedroom. There's a thing in our brain that you might know better than I, that helps us calm down, right? There's these things in our brain that help us. So if you've ever almost been in an accident and and you get elevated and you calm down, well, I grew up in an environment where I never calmed down.
Wow.
And so that got broken. So I am on high alert all the time. I can't wait for an accident to happen in front of me, or a global pandemic to come out, or I'm waiting for zombies. I'm so excited about zombies taking over the world, right? And so, but technology has created that same effect. The same effect that I grew up in, this constant awareness. Now all of you have joined me in that.
Wow.
And so the things that God has provided in our body to help us calm down, we've kind of broken those. We've gone in the wrong direction on them. And so we are all elevated and all looking for that next thing. And again, going back to technology, there are some things you can do. Perhaps you've seen, like, there's the Rest app, and there's yoga apps, Mindspace. Like, there's all kinds of apps that can do that. But I think more than that, it just honestly comes down to a decision. A minute by minute, or day by day, or week by week, month, year, whatever it is. God created this cycle we know of, right? 6 days of work and a day to rest. And we always point out that God didn't need to rest. He did that to show us this pattern, show us this cycle. And he created us in a way that our bodies are not meant to go all the time. And if we don't rest, our bodies will rest for us, right?
Dang.
It'll just, boom, it will be out. And so it really comes down to some decision making, and that can be done in partnership with others. So having an agreement with someone else. I'm married, so my wife and I, we walk a lot. And we have very specific setup times where we sit and talk and where we go for walks. Every Saturday morning we head down to Lincoln to a little coffee shop, have a pastry and a coffee. We'd love to be sitting outside, but it's still so cold, right? And we have these times of rest, but it's almost in agreement that we'll do this. And so I think that people need to recognize that the going is not good and figure out how to make rest a priority. There's no secret way to do that. It's just making the will to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel like there's been a lot of TED Talks as well. It's like how to like disconnect from social media and the importance of it. And like as like you kind of said, like there's been a lot of neurological studies that have shown like how when we do have like that, let me just look at my phone and like it gives like, it's like as you said, like it's
hits
an
of
addiction.
endorphin. There's endorphin hits every time that happens.
And it's like no, like we need to like learn to step away from that because like we're not meant to live in that constant state of high alert. Like we're meant to rest and like be still before the Lord. And like Jesus himself, like we were filming with Dr. Ambrose and she mentioned how Jesus retreated. He went and spent time alone with the Father. And it's like if Jesus, being the Son of God and being the Son of Man, like he himself did that, how much more do we have to do that as well?
And he did that. The one I'm thinking of is in the book of Mark in the early part. It says he got up early, went out of the house and went out to pray. And if you look at the first part of the book of Mark, he's on the go. He is on the go constantly. So he knew if I don't do this now in the morning, it's probably not going to happen. Right? So even Jesus had to make it a priority to do that.
And I like how you said it's a discipline. Like in a way, like when I think of discipline, I think of discipline in terms of work. Like I need to discipline myself to work. I need to discipline myself to study. I need to discipline myself to do stuff. But then you're saying I have to also discipline myself not to do stuff. That's so interesting to me. Like I have to discipline myself to be like, actually, I need to take a break now. Because both of us, we're both very go people. Like if you look at our schedules and our planners, we're like, and it's like, no, like I now need to put time in my planner. Like I'm going to take a break. Like this is my break time.
I think this is maybe the first year that I'm starting to have students email me and saying I won't be in class. I'm taking a mental health day.
Wow.
Like I've never had students say that till maybe this year or last. And it's because we've kind of let this out of the closet, which is really good. That counseling is great, and resources. We need resources. But this really is the first time I'm having students say, I'm not sick. I'm just not mentally well enough to come today. And I'm like, I'm praying for you. Have a good day of rest. I'll see you next time.
That's such a good response too.
And I love that like you as a professor be like, hey, like as a professor it's like, okay, I want my like you need to get your stuff in, but like as like a Christian and as just a dad and a human being, like no, I understand, like we all need a time to just like step away from the world and just recuperate with ourselves and with God, and then could enter into the world again. Like I love that you do that.
No schoolwork is as important as your mental health. I hope that doesn't get out. I have to write people up above so this. I may be looking for a job, but it's just true. It's just true.
It's so good.
Sometimes I've told, I don't even want to go in that, but I've told students, maybe you shouldn't do this little project. You're still going to be fine. Maybe don't do that reading because you really need to focus on other things.
And that's just responding with so much grace, like seeing that that's what they need. At the end of the day, it's not the assignment. That's not the goal. It's like your health. So I loved your response even.
I can tie this all right back to the beginning. I have two degrees on my wall. I have my ordination and I have my higher ed degrees, right? And they're in that order. My ordination is above my college degrees. And I say I am a pastor who teaches, not the other way around. And that will always be the case for me. Being a pastor to people will always take precedence over how much information I can give them.
Wow. That's awesome. Wow. So do you have any last words for like the youth generation? If you could tell them one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
I believe in them.
Wow.
I've always believed in them. Always have I believed in that God created the youth, that time period that we come through, to build, to grow, to be ready to take on more adulting responsibilities. But I have great hope for the youth of today. Even if the world is crumbling around us, a student, I had an assignment where they had to think of something that happened today that could be used as a kind of an example in a message, in a sermon, right?
Yeah.
And this one student, it was just a couple days ago, and it was pouring rain, and she said it was just pouring, it was crazy, she could barely see, and then she went under a very wide overpass,
right.
and it was absolute silence. The rain was not hitting. The windshield wipers were just making a quiet noise, and she thought, even in the midst of chaos, there can be quiet. When you know Jesus, right?
That's so good.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe for our youth today. The world is chaotic; it's spinning around at a rate that's fast. But there's a scripture. It says, "Don't let anyone look down upon you because you are young."
Wow.
But you set an example for the believers in your speech, your conduct, your love, your faith, and your purity. Young people, you set the example for others. You show them. Don't let anyone look down upon you just because you're young. But you set that example for believers. And I believe that all youth have an opportunity to make a huge impact in our world.
Wow.
I'm into that.
Yeah, I know. Preach it. The pastor came out.
I know, right? I love that. I love that. Well, Fritz, thank you so much for being on the channel and just talking about youth ministry. I feel like I learned so much from this conversation.
So enlightening. And for you guys, know we're loving to pray for y'all. So if you want to fill out the prayer request form, we'll have it down below.
Yep. And you guys could follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Spotify. And as Hazel said, we'll link some of the stuff that we talked about below. So yeah, if you guys have to get in contact with us, you guys already know how to do that. Until next time, friends, stay safe and blessed. Grace and peace. Bye.